Welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Laura, and today we are going to be planting everything into our garden. We have all our seedlings that are ready to go in the ground. It is going to be a busy day. It is going to be a hot one also, but thank you for coming along. We're not always able to dedicate big chunks of time to work in the garden. So over the last 4 days, we've done a little bit of work here and there to get the garden ready for planting. I started out by weeding the blackberry and raspberry beds because I'm planting green beans along the edge of these beds. We have an arch trellis set up in between these two beds. So I don't think they'll get very big this season, so there will be plenty of room for the green beans. I planted about 25 seeds in these two beds, but I want to preserve some green beans, so I will have to plant some bush green beans later on in the season after I harvest the garlic. I haven't decided what I'm going to plant in this bed yet, but it was full of weeds. I got a bucket full of weeds that the chickens got to enjoy. This is starting to turn into a jungle. Everything is growing here. So this is where we had our chicken coop last year, and we had decided not to plant anything here this year because the manure was going to be too fresh. But these plants didn't think so. We have a lot of squash, some type of squash that's growing there. We're not even really sure what it is. And all of those are tomatoes. It's like a thick mat of tomatoes. And then we have some chamomile and of course just grass and other weeds. It is just so much. I definitely want to keep a few of these volunteer squash plants and maybe a few tomatoes because they are doing amazing. And all along this wall, I'm supposed to be planting sunflowers. And as you can see all along the wall, it is just a jungle. It is such a mess. Believe it or not, we have wood chips and cardboard underneath all that grass. It's going to be a big project that we need to work on really soon because I need to get those seeds planted in the next few days. After dinner, the whole family went out to work. Gabriel and Nico were weeding the area along the fence so we can plant our sunflower seeds. Glenn prepared the beds, and because we moved our chicken coop and run to this side of the garden, our beds are shorter, so he had to cut the drip irrigation lines to fit the new size of the beds. I planted carrots and beets in this bed. This is actually the cucumber bed, where we will have 2 rows of cucumbers growing up a trellis. But in between those 2 rows, there is so much space that needs to be used. We grew carrots in between our cucumber rows last year, and it worked great. So this bed is planted. Over here we have the we have a cucumber. Then here we have carrots, beets, and then in this last line, along this last line, we have, I think they're called Tender Sweet. It's a variety that I got from My Gardener. It's the next day and we have more to do. I'm covering the carrots and beets I planted last night. I like to use a board to put on top of carrot seeds. I always get great germination when I do that. But this time I don't have any boards, so I'm using cardboard instead. It also works well, although it is not as easy to work with. I did this a couple weeks ago in my tomato beds. You can see 2 rows of carrot seedlings here. You just have to make sure to remove the boards as soon as one of the seeds begins to germinate.
There's a few different parts that need to be fixed, but on the whole, the system is working well. And I was worried about it wintering, but I'm glad because we spent a lot of money into this, but I'm glad that it's working well. This part I accidentally punctured with the rake, and I tried plugging it up, but it didn't work. It was still broken. So I had to replace it with this section. I'm going to run the line that way across some of our raised beds anyways. This is just a flush line that I'm going to put here just so that later on, when it gets down towards the winter again, I can flush it out this way.
Glenn worked on fixing the irrigation system. He also worked on extending the line so we can get other parts of the garden hooked up to the system. But that will be a work in progress. He focused on getting the irrigation system up and running since he had to do all that before he went to work. This is the bed where we are going to have butternut squash growing up this cattle panel trellis. But then I also decided that in the inside of the bed, I'm going to plant watermelon, and I'm going to let the watermelon sprawl on the ground, but I'm going to trellis the squash up the trellis. So I'm just going to do 1, 2, 3 watermelon plants in this entire area because I know they need a lot of space. And then I planted 7 butternut squash seeds on each row. That's all I could do today before I had to harvest for the day, water the plants that are not hooked up to the drip irrigation system, and all our seedlings and our green stalks. Then it was time for me to get back inside and get the day going with the boys. The next day we decided to attack this jungle. This is the area where we had our chicken coop last year. It's incredible how much food we have growing here without us doing a thing. All these plants just came up on their own. We're cleaning up this area. We'll get rid of the grass that's growing right through the wood chips. And then we also need to select a few plants that we want to grow here. There are hundreds of seedlings here, and we're only going to select a few. Halfway through this task, I wasn't feeling well, so Glenn finished up on his own. He did an amazing job. Today is the day. I am so excited because today we are planning on getting all our plants in the ground. And that's going to be a lot of work, but I think we have done enough to set ourselves up for success today. This morning we actually went to the farmer's market. We just got back and we ended up buying a few plants. We got 4 tomato plants, even though I have so many tomato starts already, but our tomato starts are not very big. And I just bought some big tomato plants or big tomato starts. That way, I don't know, we could get a head start, I guess. But I just got 4 of them just to feel encouraged. But we are going to be planting our tiny little seedlings into the ground. And I also bought lavender, and I didn't grow any from seed this year. And I think that's it. We are going to be planting in our beds. We have some transplanting to do. We also need to be planting some things from seed. And we're also going to be working on finishing up our green stalk tower that we needed to finish up the top 2 tiers. So we're going to be doing that as well. Okay, so it's time to decide where these are going to go. This is a super sweet 100. I believe all the ones that we got are indeterminate. And these 3 beds are going to have tomatoes. Why don't we use maybe this entire row to put like the big tomatoes, the non-cherry, and then have these 2 rows with cherry tomatoes. Like Brandywine, that's a big one, so that can go over there. These ones are also cherry tomato. Okay.
I think I just realized how excited I am to plant these tomatoes. We haven't eaten much tomato during the winter because we usually just tend to eat the tomato from our garden. I personally think the taste in the grocery store is different from the ones that we grow here in our backyard. I'm really excited to put these in the ground. And
yes, that's why we got these bigger ones, because our tomato starts are so small and it's going to take a while yet for them to start producing fruit. We finished planting 2 tomato beds, so that's 4 rows in total. We still have more peppers that need to be planted, and basil, a lot of basil. And then we have a long row of sunflower seeds that we need to sow, and other seeds here and there like cilantro, some flower seeds that I need to just find a place for them and put them somewhere. But we need to take a break. It is so hot. So we're going to take a break by working on the green stalk here in the patio where there is a little bit of shade. I planted romaine lettuce seeds in those empty pockets. I honestly don't know if they will germinate. I think I've tried that seed packet before and they never germinate. I should have just gotten rid of it, but I'm gonna try it anyway. In this next tier, I'm planting arugula and dandelion. These seeds are also old, so I'm putting a lot in there just in case. We are back. We took a long break for lunch, and because it was the middle of the day and it was just way too hot. It's still very hot, but it's late afternoon and we need to continue. So it's all hands on deck now. We called the boys to come out here and help, and we're just going to try to just finish everything up. We have more seedlings to transplant, seeds to plant, some weeding to get done, and I think if we work together we can get it done. These are the 2 beds that I planted earlier, and what's funny is, I don't know if you can see that, well, that's one of the tomatoes that I got from the farmer's market, and there's another one. What's funny is that when I came out here I freaked out because I was like, oh my gosh, my tomatoes are gone. Like, did something come and eat it while we were eating? And then as I got closer I realized, no, it's just that my tomato seedlings are way too small. They are just tiny and it almost doesn't even look like they're there, but they are. I promise they are. So we have those 2 beds that have cherry tomatoes, and I'm gonna get working on this one right now. This one has the big tomatoes. So I have a row of Amish paste tomatoes and another row of Sheboygan tomatoes. I have never grown either of those varieties before, but I'm excited for those. Oh yeah, it's perfect. All right, why don't you put some trifecta in there, just a handful. I also have Roma tomatoes, but because those are determinate, I'm going to plant them somewhere else because they don't need this trellis system right here.
Make it nice and
These leaves, you see the leaves at the bottom? Can you take the other one off? Yeah, because those are done. They're not useful anymore. Nico, I love how you are so gentle with your plants.
gracias.
This is one of the areas where we are going to be planting sunflowers. So we are going to peel back the weed fabric a little bit and put the seeds in there. So what we did is push back some of the rocks, and then we cut these little slits, I guess, and that's where I'm planting the seeds. And the hope is that the plant is going to go right through that. We needed to move back the wood chips so we can plant the sunflower seeds all along the fence. I noticed that the soil here was not as nice as other parts of the garden. Maybe because the layer of wood chips was not as thick as the other parts. Believe it or not, I do have garden tools. I'm sure it would have been smarter to use some kind of tool But for some reason, I often end up using my hands and a random stick I find in the ground. This was back-breaking work, but it felt so good to be done with it. I really hope these sunflowers grow the way I envisioned them. But I do realize that things in the garden don't always come out the way we want them. The workday ended up being way more than I thought. We were exhausted, sweaty, and covered in dirt, but I'm so grateful for the help. I'm so thankful that we all worked together and were able to get it done. So grateful for my husband Glenn, who gives his time to do this with me, and so grateful for my boys who are willing to help when we need them. On this row of tomatoes, I planted basil between each tomato plant. That is 10 plants in total. It's definitely not enough to preserve for the winter months, so I'm sure I'll plant some more later on. One tomato plant over here and another tomato plant over there. In that area in between, I'm going to plant some marigolds. Time for the chickens to get into their small run. A few days ago, we heard something in our backyard. It was 5:45 in the morning, so still dark, and we saw a fox trying to get into their run. We couldn't believe it. But after losing a chicken to a hawk and seeing the fox, we make sure to close the door to their small run every night.
I'm sweaty, dirty, hair messy. It's all there, the hard work of gardening. Just watch me become a part of this YouTube channel.
This is the asparagus bed where I planted some peppers last week. I decided to plant a few determinate cherry tomatoes. These are the gold nugget tomatoes from M.I. Gardener. I thought these plants would be really small like the tiny Tim I grew last year, so I planted them fairly close. But I was wrong. They will get much bigger than a tiny Tim tomato. Hopefully that's not a problem. Thank you so much for joining us today. We got so much accomplished today, but not everything we wanted to get done. But that's okay. I'm still happy with the progress that we made today. And when I look at my stash of seedlings, it actually looks like we did nothing. We still have so much, but that's okay because a lot of that was what my youngest son planted because he wanted to sell some seedlings. So those are that. So hopefully next weekend we'll be able to get rid of those. It is getting dark and we need to get ready to turn in for the night. So in my next video, I will give you a tour to show you everything that we have done and what we have planted in our garden this season. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time.